All right, Andy Horb, welcome to Friday 15 and our music. There it is. Like, where's our intro music? The band is asleep.
Did we pay the bills? We didn't pay the
right?
licensing.
We didn't pay the bill. Exactly. All right, Andy. Well, welcome to Friday 15, Master B2B. Welcome, everyone. It's Friday, April 26th, and we got a great session today. We're talking about PIM. We'll get into that in just a moment. But another week gone by, Andy, another great week of activity in the field. All the rest, we'll get a report from the field from you. But welcome, Andy, to our Friday 15 this week.
Yeah, great to be here. Can't wait to jump in. This is one of our favorite issues, and we'll talk about why it's one of our favorite issues.
Exactly, we will. But first, before we jump in on that, Andy, some breaking news. This is really interesting from eMarketer this week. They did a story which talked about digital marketplaces, vertical marketplaces, and retailers that were launching that have their own marketplace, talking about how they differentiate and trying to get more physical to gain an advantage over large marketplaces like Amazon. So I don't know if you saw this, Andy, but and I think this may be something that's coming to B2B. What eMarketer said is that experimenting with brick and mortar is a smart play for smaller marketplaces who want to put their products in front of a larger audience, because the majority of retail sales on the consumer side are in store. So you've got now, for example, Target and Michael's and some others who have these virtual marketplaces, e-commerce marketplaces, Andy, that are now bringing those sellers on their marketplace into their stores, which is really fascinating. And I'm wondering if this is coming to B2B. I don't know. To me, it's hard to scale this, but they're trying to find ways to differentiate from the big marketplaces like Amazon. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it was only a matter of time before this happened. I mean, the reality is, I remember hearing years ago that online would be a complement to offline. And then Amazon came along and said, hey, everything offline we can do online. And then the script kind of flipped. Yep. Then it was sort of online was going to sort of eliminate offline, which we never thought was going to happen. But the center of gravity is different now. Online is now driving offline. And this is a consequence of that. When you're online driving things offline, all of a sudden having an offline presence has a special meaning.
Yeah, and you see it with Amazon, obviously, because they bought, they've obviously moved into physical retail over time, things like that. I just don't know. For me, I just don't know if this is a play that's going to work from a marketplace perspective. Because if you think about it, how do you scale a business like this? If marketplace sellers, Amazon, for example, has millions of sellers, and these, Shine and Wayfair and Michael's and companies that have, in retail and in B2B, we have these vertical marketplaces. How do you translate all those sellers, or a lot of small sellers, into offline settings? Maybe it'll work. I don't know. Interesting. But go ahead.
I still think that a lot of this physical related to online stuff is really about returns and reverse logistics, because nobody really talks about this, but a lot of people buy stuff on Amazon and then return it to places like Whole Foods and Amazon Fresh. And by the way, Kohl's, you can return. So you can't just say Amazon's 100% online. They're doing a lot of offline stuff. Maybe it's not quite as manifest as you think it would be, but there is a connection between two. And I really wonder if some of this is really about the reverse logistics side of it.
That's an interesting point, Andy. And you think about it, right? As they expand their assortment, now that it puts it on the retailer in this case, to actually be responsible for taking back product that's sold by a third-party seller on their marketplace. So I agree with you. Getting them in the store. I mean, I remember my days at Harbor Freight Tools, Andy, when we would get people in the store from our online website to return or to buy online, pick up in store, they would buy a lot more in store. So the data is there. And so I think you're onto something there, and maybe that's what they're after. But we'll keep watching this for everybody and see. So, Andy, we're going to talk about our favorite topic, PIM. Is a PIM needed in B2B e-commerce? My goodness. We put this on LinkedIn. We had thousands of impressions, likes, comments, shares. I mean, it was crazy. Everybody wants to talk about this.
Yeah, but who did we not hear from?
Well, that's the crazy thing. We didn't hear from any of the PIMs. I even called them out. I even called out every single freaking PIM in the market. Not a single person commented from any of the PIM companies. I'm like, what's going on here? Are they tone deaf? PIMs, there's a problem here.
I don't get it.
I don't get it, man.
For years, we've had this issue. We talk to everybody in the industry. The search people talk to us. Obviously, the e-commerce platform people talk to us. We talk about how big a data problem is. We're going to talk about it here in a moment. The PIM fits right into that. When we talk to PIM people, the conversation goes nowhere.
I don't get it, man.
I don't get why these PIM folks are not all over this.
Seriously.
And we're going to show some data here in a moment that's just mind-numbing about why they wouldn't be more involved with, for example, us and B2B e-commerce. I'm sure they're going to tell us, oh, they're selling directly or whatever. I'm like,
I don't know.
I don't get it.
I don't know. Maybe it's such a big problem that they don't need to engage in the community. I don't get it. But I mean, our community folks, and if anyone from a PIM is listening here, you got a big problem with B2B e-commerce people. You know, people leading this, they have a big issue with this, with data inconsistency, normalization. We're going to talk about it in a second. So anyway, you know, we'll you know, I mean, you'd be screaming in a in an empty chasm here, but but anyway, there's a real opportunity here, I think, for companies to solve this issue because it is a big problem, as we're going to share. I mean, Andy, you were in Minneapolis this week at a roundtable, and a great one, right? We had close to 40 people at this thing, and you facilitated it. You're talking AI, right? But I'm sure data came up as a part of this conversation as well, right?
Half the conversation was about data. I mean, the first part was we want to do AI. The second part was, oops, we can't do AI because our data is such a mess. How do we get our data into order? AI can help with that, but you have to put it someplace. A PIM is a perfect location for this. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the most emergent issue we've seen in B2B is about the data. You and I have talked about this many times.
Yes.
PIM is a critical component of that. In fact, I would argue the most interesting thing about PIM is when do you buy it? Do you buy it early or do you buy it late?
Right.
And this is what we have a lot of conversation about. But yeah, it was a great event. It's the Minneapolis or Twin Cities chapter. We actually held it in St. Paul, which is right next door to Minneapolis.
Yep.
Twin Cities chapter really showed out. Great brands that were there. Great Northern was there. Toro was there. 3M, Solventium, their new healthcare spin out. A lot of great companies there. People were thrilled, and we're doing it again in the fall.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really kind of unrecognized center of B2B, Minneapolis is. So thank you all for joining us there, and we'll continue to do these roundtables around the country. We'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, again, it gets back to this data issue because it truly is, Andy, a problem for B2B commerce. And it's not even just e-commerce. I mean, we see this in, you know, obviously in my work with Amazon, even, you know, every single one of these channels, whether it's you're selling to a distributor, you're selling yourself online as a distributor, you're consuming data from a manufacturer, you're trying to sell in a marketplace like Amazon, data, or even just your sales team is trying to communicate accurate information. There is a data problem, and this data problem is causing issues for B2B companies. Gartner said this: 40% of businesses fail to achieve their objectives due to missing, incomplete, or inaccurate data, right? So there's an issue here, you know, that talks about real business results. In fact, you know, in Harvard Business Review, Andy, a couple of years ago, couple other statistics that they revealed, only 3% of companies' data meets basic quality standards, and they put a number on it. Bad data costs the U.S. $3 trillion a year. Oh my gosh, if this isn't a problem, you know what I mean? It's insane. The numbers here. So, you know, you think about this from a practitioner standpoint. Why doesn't everybody, you know, kind of have a PIM? It manifests all the way down to the e-commerce site, right? What makes B2B buyers go elsewhere? I'm showing a study here, Digital Commerce 360. Number one reason products are unavailable or hard to find on a B2B e-commerce site. What is hard to find tie back to? Oh, sure, it's the search functionality. But what else?
Whenever I talk about this, I'm like, you can't buy a product you can't find. So let's go back up the value chain here. Let's figure out, why can't you find this product? Well, it has a bad description, incomplete description, one picture that's grainy. The attributes are not well defined. That's what a PIM really helps with, is attributes. Because if you put a product in a PIM, it's going to force you to describe that product. Those attributes are really the mother's milk of a product and merchandising and selling a product. So that's what a PIM does. It doesn't solve your data problem.
Right.
You have to have clean data, but a PIM will force discipline on you. and mandate that you describe a product accurately and put it in the system. And then, with companies like Salsify and others, you can syndicate this to multiple sites. To your point, if you've got a good PIM, you could be selling stuff on your website, on a vertical marketplace, on Amazon, you name it. But it's a step in the process. The question is, when do you actually get the PIM? Because I know a lot of companies that bought PIMs and 2 years later, it's just sitting there like that gym equipment in your garage doing absolutely nothing. And then it's like a sunk cost. Like, well, we have to use it now because we bought it, even though it's kind of out of date. And it's like, I wish we just cleaned up our data first and then bought the PIM. I think there's arguments on both sides here, but there's no argument for not having a PIM. You can't just throw all the stuff in an ERP. And a lot of e-commerce platforms can get you started on the PIM front. They have native capability. But if you're a serious player, you're going to need a best of breed PIM.
Yeah, no question. We got some great comments, and I'll read a couple of them. But I think it's also important for our audience here to define what exactly is PIM, right? And this is a definition that I pulled from Adobe's website, which I think is pretty good. Product information management, PIM, systems let users store, enrich, and manage complex product information. PIM tools centralize product-related data, streamlining the process of updating and managing accurate information through multiple sales and marketing channels. So that's, it's really a tool or a platform. And you asked a question, Andy, just a moment ago, why doesn't every company kind of have a PIM? This is a study by a company that does PIM called Informatica. And what the study revealed is, the question they asked is, why are you not considering implementation of a PIM solution? The number one reason was lack of a cost-effective business case, negative ROI analysis. What? That's, Go ahead.
It's the same story you hear from CMS.
Right.
It's how e-commerce actually is in many ways blessed because they can show, because of transactions, they can show an ROI. But CMS, we got a catalog. Why is a better catalog going to produce more revenue than a slightly worse catalog? On an incremental basis, you can't really establish that one CMS is significantly better than another. And PIM suffers from the same problem. Hey, if you've got cleaner data and it's cleaner than some other data, how do you establish that they cleaner data? Now, I think there are ways you can actually measure this stuff for sure, like the velocity of it, the appearance of it, the accuracy. You can measure these things because, again, inaccurate data means low conversion rates. So there is a way to do it, but it's hard for a lot of companies to make that argument that, hey, our data is a mess. The better we manage it, the more money we can make. They're like, wait, stop with the data's a mess thing. I'm not sure. Is it? I see data on our website.
Right. It's like, and actually what's interesting, Andy, if you look at, two things I'll point out here. One is that, to that exact point, as we look at, for example, Melissa Wallner, who's a longtime industry veteran, she commented on our LinkedIn post. And this is the perception of ROI could be different here than the reality of it. Meaning, when she commented, she said, PIM, it's PIM, not intended to be a direct revenue driver. So that can make getting buy-in from the investment, for investment more difficult, for some organizations. So, your executive team, if they don't see, hey, we can do e-commerce platform. Oh, sure. Open up a new channel, launch a marketplace, or do this or that. Okay. But, PIM is foundational. And you look at how Forrester defines it, ROI from a PIM system, you can use a product information system, PIM system, to decrease time to market for new products, acquire and grow new customers and accounts, and increase customer lifetime value. There is a return on investment to this. I was doing some research on this yesterday, Andy. It's clear. It's not as, maybe it's not as clear to the executive team, and it doesn't get funding, right? Like Melissa said. So, I think there's a clear ROI here, but it's not just the system, right? There's other things which I think make it a little trickier.
And you need to know what your metrics are. I mean, we talked about this in Minneapolis, spent quite a bit of time talking about it, because all roads lead to metrics. If you don't measure it, you're not going to know it. And a lot of times measuring, you should start out with the metrics. Okay, how are we going to define the success of the business? The funny part about that is that forces companies to figure out what business they're in, which is part of why they don't like to do the metrics thing, because it forces them to say, this is what we're doing. We're selling to these people. Here's how we're going to measure that. And then everything cascades from it. But yes, there is a way to measure the value of a PIM. And data, I still think there's this understanding in the industry that data is a cost center. Less mature companies perceive it to be a problem that needs to be solved. It's not. It is what differentiates you. We've talked about this. Companies can build, buy, borrow, steal every other part of their business, except the one about their customer and their product data, in particular the customer data. So how is that not the most important thing you own?
Exactly. Well, here's the thing, and Amber, thank you for your comments. In fact, Amber Robinson, who's commenting here on our stream, on our podcast. Amber, thank you for your comment, because I actually pulled one of your quotes out of this. So, one of the things that emerged in all of the dozens of comments we got on our LinkedIn post and poll, Andy, was that it goes beyond the system, right? So I'll read Amber's first, because she's on the commenting here. Amber Robinson said, "It's interesting to me that many companies want to invest and seek AI solutions, which are fundamentally based on data, but they haven't gotten their data governance and management systems well organized. And what she says is build credibility, operational efficiency, enable AI, and that will be the sort of the next generation of this." Agree with you, but another comment here from Ken. Management of data. So it's not just about the system. It's also about how you utilize, what goes into the system and the process. Ken Jans, who was with the CMO at a company called Zovu, which is a systems integrator, the outputs and inputs of systems, how it needs to be consistently enriched, and the management process for data. That's what he's talking about. So this is, it's the system is a foundational part, I think, but it's also what you put into it and behind it. So
the good news is AI now can actually help solve part of that problem.
Right.
It can help organize the data that it then will, you use AI to syndicate more effectively, promote more effectively, et cetera, et cetera. So AI is actually a game changer on multiple levels when it comes to data. But there is a fundamental notion that you've got to have your data organized enough so that even AI can do something with it.
So the question is, Andy, does PIM solve the data problem? I would argue that it is a foundational component. On its own, it doesn't solve it, but it forces you to address the issue. I'll read you a quote we got from Tanya Coletta, who's head of e-commerce at Metri, which is the world's apparently the largest U.S. manufacturer distributor of millwork. So they make stuff that goes in your house. Commercial millwork, etc. She said, which is interesting, we asked a question, what should you do first? An e-commerce platform, a PIM, what comes first? She said, e-com came first for us, but I wish a PIM had. And what's interesting here in her quote, implementing our PIM forced us to focus on product data and asset cleanup and governance. We're still on the journey, but PIM with accurate data and quality content was game changing. So she's saying, hey, listen, before you do some of these other things, we need to do PIM first, because it is foundational. And what she said is it forced them to engage in a process to clean all this up. So my
PIM
opinion,
helps organize data. That's what it does. It doesn't solve the data problem. It helps you organize data. I use the analogy oftentimes, if you got a dirty garage, you go buy some containers, which is like the PIM.
Right.
If you put the containers in the garage doesn't clean itself up. And it will help you organize it. Right. Exactly. But if you have a problem with just loading stuff up in your garage and you're constantly having to organize it, the PIM isn't going to solve the problem any more than the containers are going to solve the problem.
Exactly. So we asked our community on LinkedIn, Andy, is a PIM system needed for B2B e-commerce? And by a huge margin, everybody said yes. 92%. They want to solve.
Should we just send this to the PIM vendors so they can actually see
what are you guys doing?
We had almost 100 people come in on this, right? As well. I mean, it was well voted on. I mean, it was a large group of people. A lot of people. Overwhelming answer here.
I don't know. It just blows me away. So, I'm going to go start a PIM company.
I just think they're tone deaf. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't feel like. I have no idea. I rarely say this. I have a theory on most things. I have no theory on why the PIM companies are not more actively promoting themselves, associating with, like, for example, us. Us could be anybody.
Well, sure, right.
But I don't know why they aren't doing that. I don't know what their go-to-market strategies are. I don't get any of that stuff because we rarely see them. We never hear from them. Yet we hear constantly from companies asking us,
no, it's crazy.
What should we do with a PIM or not? So I don't know. It feels like a mismatch there.
Yeah, seriously, I'm gonna start a PIM company. All right. So, well, this has been a great session, Andy, talking about PIM. Thank you for those listening in. A couple quick announcements before we wrap our Friday 20, 15, 20, whatever. So upcoming events, folks, we're going to be at B2B Online in a couple of weeks. We have a couple of dinners there. I think we're pretty much full, but we may have 1 or 2 slots open. If you're a practitioner and you want to join us for one of our executive dinners, we'll also be presenting. We have a debate going on stage at B2B Online, fun stuff. And then we're going to be in Denver on May 21st. Anybody in Denver, we have some room available still for a few practitioners to join us at a roundtable and executive dinner. Awesome. These events are great. The conversations are fantastic. Again, that's May 21st. And of course, Andy, we have our summit coming up in June 4th at the University of Chicago's Gleacher Center. This is going to be a great event. We're over, gosh, I think we're about
to waiting list now.
Yeah,
I think
we're at a waiting list, aren't we? Yeah, we're about there. For practitioners, we're going to have over 130 people at this thing. It's going to be fabulous. So if you are a practitioner executive that would like to join us, manufacturer distributor, let us know. We can put you on the waiting list, see if we can get you in. And then, we still have a few. I think we have 1 sponsorship spot left. So if anybody's interested on the call here, we'd love to hear from you, or the podcast. And remember, all of our folks are gathering online at the forum. So go to our website. Seeing lots of activity here, Andy, lots of back and forth. Go to our website, look at the forum, sign up. If you're a practitioner, it's only practitioners. You can come in and join the conversation. And finally, all of our episodes here are available on podcast form in Spotify, Apple, and Google. So look for us. Just search Master B2B in your favorite podcast platform. You'll find us. It's also on our website. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. Any final words as we wrap our Friday 20?
No, the NFL draft took place last night. So my hometown, although not my team, the Chicago Bears finally got a quarterback. So that's a big deal.
Congratulations, Andy. Excellent. We'll keep an eye on how that works out for you people there in Chicago. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week on our next Friday 15.